Welcome, my viewers and listeners. Uh, I am totally pleased that I have seen more than 40 viewers viewed my last video. I have promised to all of you that today we shall discuss regarding the various lacunas or the errors which cannot be located in the trial balance even after the total of the debit side and the credit side of the trial balance tallied. In this respect, one thing I wanted to mention to all of you, you may think or it may come to your mind that I am discussing these preliminary things and these preliminary topics. I hope and I know that most of you know well. Still, I am discussing them. The reason behind is that most of the questions of nowadays are MCQ type, and the most astonishing part is that we do not pay attention on these easiest and preliminary topics, and most of the MCQs are given from thereby, and at the time of examination or at the examination hall we become hesitant or we become puzzled or we become thoughtful which answer among the given three or four alternatives will be correct. That is why the topics which you are or which I am thinking the preliminary topics or which I am thinking very easy topics, we must not pay less attention on them for the purpose of the examination on accountancy or any subject. Now I am coming back to our discussion. Let us discuss the basic errors which cannot be located especially uh, in the trial balance even after the total of the debit side and the credit side agrees. The first one is the error of the principle. Error of principle. This is a very vital error and we must understand it in detail. We shall understand it in detail when we shall discuss in our next video the gap or generally accepted principle. I am not going to that topics at present now. So, what is the error of the principle? The error of the principle is basically the choice of accounting heads due to lack of our knowledge. For example, the erection charges for a machinery is rupees 500 paid, or paid the erection charges for a new machinery for rupees 500. Someone or we may do the journal, in this case erection charges debit to cash or bank, or repairing charges debit to cash or bank, but actually the real journal entry should be machinery account debit to cash or bank. The reason is what? The reason is that when a fixed asset is being bought and all the expenditures incurred before its operation or the expenditures incurred up to the starting of the operating of a fixed assets should be debited to that fixed assets account. Why? Because as soon as we are putting an asset into operation or in use, the depreciation or the wear and tear due to its use or due to its idleness will start. So, until and unless the asset is in operation, the expenditures incurred for that asset to bring it into its operating condition will enhance the value of the assets. will enhance the value of the assets. That is why the expenditure incurred for the purpose of the erection, or say for purpose of bringing the machinery by way of the carriage or whatever it may be, from a long distance to the erection place or to the factory or wherever it may be, will all be debited to that particular asset account. Now, so far the error of the principal is concerned, if I passed a journal entry for our last transaction that repairs account debit or erection charges account debit to cash or bank, we have done this journal. So instead of debiting the machinery account, if we do this journal, we shall call it an error of principle. We shall call it an error of principle. In this context, I wanted to say that whatever the mistakes we used to do in passing the journal entries or whatever it may be, its correction, or in other words, its rectification, cannot be done by cancelling the error or the mistaken transaction. For every error, we have to pass another rectification entry, which we shall discuss later on. Gradually, I shall go through these chapters, and very soon we will see ourselves just in front of the whiteboard. Very soon the time is coming. So error of principle is basically the error of choosing an accounting head. If we choose a wrong accounting head, then it will be against the various concepts, principles, conventions as detailed in the GAAP. We shall discuss GAAP in detail, those various concepts, those various conventions, etc. Now I am coming to our next point, the error of commission or error of omission. Let us first discuss the error of omission. Error of omission is very simple. Suppose a transaction has been occurred, paid rent rupees 5,000, but this entry is totally escaped from the view of the accountant or from ourselves view, and no entries or no effect in the books of the accounts has been given regarding a particular transaction. The transaction is totally omitted. In that case, the trial balance will agree on the both sides, as because no effect has been given on the debit side or the credit side. And in this case, the trial balance will also agree its total in the both sides, though the error of omission of a transaction remained in the total list of the transactions of an organization for a period. Now I am coming the error of commission. What is error of commission? The error of commission is nothing but the numerical records for recording a transaction from an original document to the books of accounts. Suppose sold goods to X Limited for rupees 5,000. Sold goods to X Limited for rupees 5,000. We are understanding that it is a credit transaction. In this context, I wanted to mention that all the transactions which took place actually, they may be either cash transaction or the credit transaction. Cash transactions, you know, or we know very well that as soon as the transactions took place, we made our payment by cash, by check, by debit card, by credit card, whatever the means we have as a mode of the payment. Let us come back. So, sold goods to X Limited for rupees 5,000. Naturally, our journal entry should be X Limited debtor to sales for rupees 5,000. But by mistake, we wrote in the journal X Limited debtor to sales for rupees 500. That is rupees 500 in the debit side and rupees 500 in the credit side. Naturally, we understand that as the debit side and the credit side amount is same, it will give no effect for the tally or for the agreement of the total debit side and the credit side of the trial balance. But yet, a large amount, around rupees 4,500, remained mistaken in the books of accounts or in recording the transaction. I shall discuss later on how shall we detect these mistakes or the errors in practical way, not in a bookish language or not in a theoretical language. We shall discuss it in a very practical manner. The third point is that the error of misposting. Error of misposting. Error of misposting is actually occurred by debiting the wrong accounting head for a correct accounting head. Take the example of our previous example. We told that sold machinery to X Limited for rupees 5,000. Naturally, the journal should be, I told you, X Limited debit to sales. But by mistake, we passed the entry Y Limited debit to sales account. Try to understand. There is no difference in the currency value. One thing must be understood, that a mistake will occur only then when there will be the numerical value mistaken, either both debit side and the credit side, or the numerical value was mistaken. One value is given in the debit side, say 500, and another different value is given in the credit side of the same journal for some other accounting head. So, debit side and credit side, different number or different figures or different currency value. For this reason, it may be a mistake. Another, the mistake will not be located, but the accounting head is wrong. In our example, instead of the X Limited, we have debited the Y Limited debit to sales. So as the currency value of rupees 5,000 remains same in both the instances, therefore it will not give any effect in the total of the trial balance, and the trial balance will agree. Now lasting, we are coming to the compensating error or error of compensating. These errors or compensating errors is rare case, because suppose you have debited rupees 50 wrongly in some account on the debit side, and in the similar fashion on the credit side, one transaction rupees 30, another transaction rupees 20, mistakenly you have also credited. So what happens, whatever wrongly we have debited rupees 50, and in the similar fashion the same amount mistakenly we have credited in the credit side also. So naturally, if the amount of the mistake remains same both on the debit side and as well as in the credit side, then it will not give any effect for tallying the total of the debit side of trial balance and the credit side of the trial balance. So these are gone, the 3 or 4 or 5 types of the errors. I am repeating them again, just making a summarize. Error of principle, by which we should understand the error of choosing wrong accounting head, whereas the amount of debit and credit will remain same. Next is the error of commission. In the error of the commission, naturally, what happens? The wrong amount instead of the correct amount posted both in the debit side and the credit side. There is error of the misposting. Error of the misposting is actually the wrong accounting head we are going to choose. Compensating errors, the same amount is mistakenly written on the debit side and mistakenly written on the credit side. For the purpose of the exam, remember that different type of the transactions will be given based on these 4 or 5 types of the error. And we shall be asked which type of the error the transaction belongs to, giving the different types of the transaction. Suppose, for example, as I told you, if the question says bought a machinery rupees 5,000 in cash from X Limited, our journal should be what? Machinery account debit to X Limited or machinery account debit to bank account. The question is arising. In this case, as the payment has been made immediately, so who is the supplier? It does not has much importance. Naturally, our journal will be machinery account debit to bank or to cash, whatever it may be. But in the narration, we can say that bought a machinery on cash from X Limited. So, by putting this transaction, if it is asked that what type of the error has been done when we are doing machinery account debit to X Limited instead of machinery account debit to bank account, naturally it will be an error of the principle. So in this fashion, different type of the transactions may be given and different type of the questions may come from these topics. Now question arises, how can we detect these errors in the practical field? We are the learners. We have very little knowledge regarding the practical world of the accountancy. I wanted to mention that if the mistakes are connected with the day books, say purchases, say sales, in those cases, the verification of the invoices along with our day books can give the result of locating the errors. Nowadays, at the GST regime, all of us know that the invoices are actually cross-connected and they are cross-verified. So, there may not be much trouble in that case to locate the omission of any invoice recording in the books of the accounts, whether it is a sales invoice or whether it is the purchase invoice. Now I am coming to the next in the case of the revenue expenditures. Say the omission or the any type of the mistake, if it is occurred for the purpose of any transaction which are in the revenue nature, then the best way is the vouching. The term vouch or voucher, all of you know, there may be 2 types of the voucher. One may be the receipt voucher and another may be the payment voucher. There may be money receipt also, it may be used, that is a separate issue. So, when the vouching is done, you can say the vouching is the mother of the verifications of the books of accounts. By the vouchers, we can also verify the capital expenditures, whether it is recorded in the books of records or not, as well as the revenue expenditures. In this context, I wanted to mention in short what is capital expenditure and what is revenue expenditure. Capital expenditure is the expenditure, the benefit of which we can obtain for a long time. The benefit of which we can obtain for a long time. Whereas, in short, I am telling, I am not going in the details discussions or detailed differences between the capital expenditure and the revenue expenditure. So far as it is required in this context, I am discussing to that extent. Now, what is revenue expenditure? The revenue expenditure is the expenditure, the benefit of which is ended after a certain period of the time. For example, we have paid rent for rupees 5,000 for the month of the March. So, the benefit of this rupees 5,000 we shall obtain up to the end of the March. As soon as the month of the April will come, we have to incur rupees another 5,000 as a payment of the rent for the month of the April. Therefore, the recurring expenses, it is revenue expenses means one kind of the recurring expenses, the benefit of which is ended with the end of the period for which the expenditure has been incurred or being paid. So, I am ending here our discussion. I shall come before you with the gap, which is a very important, and I can say the base of the total accounts, and we should understand in detail for the purpose of MCQ and for the purpose of better understanding the rules, concepts, etc. of the accounting procedure. Please stay safe and stay well. Thank you for listening and giving your time to me. I hope you will become benefited from this video and share it to your near and dear ones. Thank you.